This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. We have a great show for you today, and you're going to like it or else. Our guest today is Dr. Anne Kiel, a former Air Force physician and a Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.
Speaking of food, fellas, have either of you ever eaten a mystery meat, something you didn't know what was made of, like a nugget or a sausage patty that left you thinking, I'm not really
like every MRE ever.
The texture was totally different between one meal to the next of the same kind. Yeah, I'm with you.
This is something crunchy in it, and you were like, I don't know what that was. So thankfully, when next time you're out and about at a restaurant, you won't be subjected to eating legal lab cultivated mystery meats anytime soon, because a federal judge rejected a request banning the sale of manufactured meat. Did you know that was even a thing, like a lab manufactured meat?
That sounds
I didn't know about this ban, but I'm glad for it.
Yeah, it sounds so delish.
Yum, tumors.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess there are labs out there like manufacturing meat. So if our guest today doesn't inspire you to want to go vegan, this manufactured meat thing might actually make you think about it. Am I right?
I agree. And I just want to add that I don't think that there should be meat in labs for making it, only for testing it. And the only lab I like is the one that Dr. Dre was in with his pen and his pad when he was trying to get his damn label off.
Okay, Alphas, please stick around. We'll be back with Dr. Anne Kiel right after the break.
Just like smiles, no two military families are alike, but all retired uniformed service members and their families can count on Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Dental. With open season for enrollment running now through December 9th, it's a good time to see what the benefit of Blue can do for you. You'll pay nothing for covered dental exams, cleanings, and x-rays when you see an in-network dentist, and their network has dentists in all 50 states. For more coverage details and premiums, visit bcbsfepdental.com today.
As a veteran, you've done more than your fair share of providing support. Now it's our turn. Introducing the WellCare and the American Legion Partnership and the WellCare Medicare Advantage plans that give you more support, more access, and more benefits in addition to your VA benefits. Visit wellcareforveterans.com today or call 844-917-1165. Ohana Health Plan, a plan offered by WellCare Health Insurance of Arizona, Inc. New Mexico Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan, DSNP members. As a WellCare by Allwell DSNP member, you have coverage from both Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid services are funded in part by the state of New Mexico. New Mexico Medicaid benefits may be limited to payment of Medicare premiums for some members.
Hiya, Alphas. Today we are joined by Dr. Anne Kiel. Hi, Dr. Kiel. Welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. A pleasure being here.
So what would you like us to call you? Because, when you earn the title doctor, some people are like, doctor. And I'm totally fine with that because you've put the work in. What would you like us to call you, though?
I'm happy for you to call me Anne. That's
okay, Dr. Kiel,
fine.
thank you so much. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. Your time is important to us. And it means a lot that you're willing to come here and share with us. So thank you, first of all. But
absolutely.
So recently I've been, personally looking into some non-invasive types of treatments for things like, PTSD and for TBI. I'm personally don't suffer from TBI or anything, but the technology that is going into these type of treatments is super interesting to me, and these lifestyle choices and the things that we're starting to see, that things like, how we treat our bodies and how we eat and everything it can change everything. And so one of the things that I actually had my first session yesterday of something called neurofitness, which is all about remapping the way your brain works cognitively. It's almost like a physical version of classic conditioning where you're rewiring almost like reflexes, like neurological pathways. And it's gotten me so interested in finding other ways to look at improving my my own health overall. With the rise in awareness of PTSD and TBI among veterans, how has your approach to treating these conditions evolved since you started? Because we know so much more now. I mean, back in 2004, I'd never even heard the term TBI. And it seems like every year we're just learning more and more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And super great question. And first off, just to have to say kudos to you for exploring those other methods that might, give you some other opportunities to take control of your health or your future health. So starting off, I guess I would say I'm a pediatrician by trade. So I'm not actively treating adults with adult conditions, but certainly through the lifestyle medicine board certification that I also have, we learn quite a lot about how our lifestyles affect adults and children too, as they're going through life to become hopefully healthy adults. And I think that as a physician, I sort of would have expected, or I thought I knew at the time in my early training years, that I knew everything there was to know, right? Certainly everything that I had been trained on as far as health and wellness. And I became certified in lifestyle medicine in 2019. And that was a huge eye opener, almost mind blowing experience about how much I really didn't know. It was very humbling to realize that the power that lifestyle has in so many different types of conditions is truly immense. And I feel like that's one thing that's definitely turned my practice around kind of on its head. I was always very health conscious, very preventive in nature as a pediatrician. We focus on kind of the foundation of care with kids, but the lifestyle medicine approach has really allowed me to take it to the next level of getting to the root cause of disease, helping people find ways to make small changes or big changes sometimes, and then see drastic transformations that they didn't know were even possible oftentimes. So it's been a joy and a pleasure to learn that way.
Well, it's funny because it seems like we forget about those building blocks of what we learn, what we're supposed to know how to take care of ourselves when we're young. And
Absolutely.
and just like when like sports injuries and things like that people have, when a doctor tells you, hey, you've jacked your elbow up, you need to chill out for 6 weeks. They're not telling that for the 12-year-old. They're saying that for the 50-year-old person you're going to be, because you will be 50 years old and you're going to go, what the heck is this? Like, I didn't
Yes.
even do anything. Why does this hurt?
Absolutely. Yeah, we completely underestimate, I think, and everybody's in a different place, and depending on your age or your environment or your experiences, you may not be ready at that moment to embrace some of these changes that we're recommending towards health and longevity. That may not be the driver or the motivation that gets somebody moving. And so really trying to understand what their particular goals are, especially for children and adolescents, what is it that's going to motivate them to make some small changes, or the family or the parents, right? Can be really key in helping us get someone on the path that's going to help them meet their long-term goals, short-term and long-term goals, I would say.
Well, Dr. Kiel, first off, I wanted to congratulate you on your recent retirement. That's a
Thank you
big
so much.
milestone. Yeah, of course. After such a distinguished career, particularly in championing the integration of lifestyle and performance medicine that you've kind of been talking to us a little bit about in the Air Force, I was wondering what kind of stands out to you as one of the things you're most proud of in the work that you did over the course of your career. And maybe just an easy precursor to that is, you've been talking a little bit about it, but for our listeners, will you kind of explain what lifestyle and performance medicine is?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. I was 21 years in the Air Force, and I recognize that there are many others who do longer. And it doesn't necessarily matter how long or short your role is with the military. Obviously, everybody deserves kudos for that. But I appreciate that. It was a fun, exciting experience all around. And I'm super grateful to be on this side of it now, to be able to continue this work with lifestyle and performance medicine. So, in a nutshell, lifestyle medicine is all about helping people learn behaviors, sustainable behavior change that they can do to help influence their health and wellness over the course of a lifetime. And we talk about not just lifespan, but health span, right? How can we increase the number of years that someone remains healthy and well in the midst of so many challenges, whether it's your social or environmental or medical history or family history. So we focus on things that are very, very basic, like eating well, and how can we get more whole food plants into your diet? How can we get better sleep? How can we help someone manage their stress? How can we help them avoid risky substances like tobacco and alcohol that really have a significant impact on your long-term health and longevity? How can we help cultivate those positive social connections that people need? There's a huge amount of literature supporting, helping people be more positively social and extending longevity. And then how can we get more movement into our lives every single day? We talk about exercise and physical activity, but what does that look like depending on people's abilities and what they have available to them? And how can we just make that more effective for their long-term health? So that's all about lifestyle medicine. We use conventional techniques. We prescribe pharmaceuticals. We refer to specialists or for surgical interventions as needed, but we're always bringing it back to that kind of comprehensive approach to getting down to the bare bones foundation over those 6 pillars that I just mentioned, and how can we help people use them more effectively to meet their short-term and long-term goals. So that's the field of lifestyle medicine.
Are people pretty receptive to these approaches and methodologies? Because I think for some it requires them to think and act and behave differently, and that can be the challenging and hard thing.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. And that is also a huge component of the lifestyle medicine approach, is helping tap into that person's why, right? What is it that's their ultimate reasoning for wanting to maybe embrace some of these behavior changes, and using that as the motivation to move that direction. And it may take lots of time and very small steps, depending on the person, or they may be willing to do more and get there a little bit faster. And I think more and more, the way you frame it to individuals is so crucial, and more they're much more receptive to that. We can prescribe pharmaceuticals, which, I tell my patients, but they may not always get them the help that they want, or help them be the best form of themselves that they want to be. Sometimes we use, I kind of think of conventional medicine sometimes as a Band-Aid, right? If we're not focusing on the root cause to help them mitigate that, sometimes a pharmaceutical can simply be a Band-Aid that's sort of temporary and may not, it comes with side effects sometimes. Not to say that all medicines are bad. We've benefited certainly from technology and scientific influence on medicine and things like that. And it's crucial for some things, but circling back to those root causes can oftentimes help people feel empowered. Like, I can do something, right? I may have this diagnosis, but here are things that I can do every single day that can help tremendously. And we oftentimes don't communicate that as effectively as we could to our patients to help them know that they have that power.
So when I was preparing and doing my research to speak with you today, I went down a whole rabbit hole. And so I want to kind of touch a little bit about my history. So at the time that I got wounded, I weighed about probably 138 pounds. I was pretty much a lot of lean muscle and very, very fit. Probably I was 27 years old. Very, very fit. I was eating what, your standard pyramid diet. Didn't really think a whole lot outside of what you're traditionally taught. So I didn't think too much of it. But after that, I spent a lot of time pretty much inactive because I was told I wouldn't be able to stand for prolonged periods of time, let alone do any more running or lifting anything. And so for the better part of a year, I bought into that, and I was pumped full of a lot of drugs and painkillers and things like that. And I finally took my own health back into my own hands and began getting back into physical activity. I wasn't consuming a lot of calories. And even when I started running, I began running again. And I said, okay, my goal is to do a marathon. But I had gotten up to 200 pounds I think it was probably over the span of a couple of years, even despite training for a marathon. I had still kind of adhered to that pyramid diet. A lot, I think physiologically, a lot had changed because of that inactivity for so long, and I hadn't really realized that. So I guess on my own, I figured out that my body needed a drastic change. And so I cut a lot. I cut sugar out completely, anything to do with sugars, including like fruit and things like that. So I changed my entire outlook. It took me 2 years to get back to about 100 pre-trauma weight. So what I want to talk to you about is identifying how diet, what goes in, affects your body, identifying those kind of things. How can we figure those out? How can people be cognizant of that? My sister was a vegan for decades, and I think you're a vegan. Is that correct? Or did I read that somewhere? Is that correct?
But I'm a healthy food vegan, I like to say. So I don't necessarily prescribe to a lot of the vegan processed foods. But yes, whole food, plant-based eater.
Okay. I am not a vegan. I do like my bacon, but I do think that like healthy whole food eating is important. But can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of food and what we're putting into our bodies and how it affects our health and what people should be thinking about?
Absolutely. And I love this question. So thank you so much for asking it. And also, great job. Huge congratulations on making all of the progress that you did and taking control of your own health. So that's amazing.
Thanks.
I think, personally, I've learned so much about nutrition over the last several years. You would think as a physician, we would learn nutrition, right? But I think everyone in the healthcare field is at a limitation, or at least physicians when it comes to medical school, as far as not being trained in how nutrition influences different diagnoses and disease states. There are some medical schools that do provide some nutritional training, but it's more typically, at least when I trained, it's more, recognizing certain disease states based on lack of nutrients that we're not typically used to seeing here in the United States. We don't learn about the nutrition that can influence type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure or overweight and obesity. I think things are changing, with the call to action from Congress and the President's Nutrition Summit that happened a couple of years ago. They're calling for significant transformations in the way health professionals and specifically physicians are trained when it comes to nutrition. And so, one thing that I've learned over the course of the last 6 to 8 years is how significantly impactful food can be and how we aren't given the right information. We think we know, but a lot of the marketing and advertisements that happen when it comes to foods that are naturally in our social arenas, our culture, we just don't recognize what a significant impact, negative impact, I would say, that they have on our health. and longevity, specifically, as you mentioned, like things like sugar and fat, processed, highly ultra processed foods and things like that. And so I like to encourage people, not necessarily when they're starting out, to, it depends on the person, but they may not be at the point where they're interested in eliminating foods from their diet, right? But how can we start working on putting more whole food plants on their plate? And what does that look like for them? Is it, how can we get more of whatever their favorite vegetable is on their plate for that particular meal of the day? And you mentioned the USDA food pyramid. Lifestyle medicine approach really targets 4 sort of areas of food: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes or beans, right? And so those are the areas of the types of foods that we really recommend people learn how to incorporate more into their diet every day. Focus on high fiber foods, and that's what those are. I think people in America, especially, we know don't get nearly enough fiber, and fiber is so critical for running our body and our metabolism, all the gut microbes in our intestines. And I think the last statistic I learned was 97% of the American population doesn't get enough fiber every day. We see that in kids in my pediatric practice. Quite a lot happens when they don't get enough fiber. And so how can we help increase that? Fiber comes only from plant foods. There's no fiber in animal foods whatsoever. And so when you think about the standard American diet, where someone's eating a lot of animal food products for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or, whatever snacks or meals they may have, the amount of fiber they're actually getting is very negligible. And so lifestyle medicine approach, at least for the nutritional pillar, really works on helping people move in the direction of adding more whole food plants to their diet. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. I guess what I kind of tend to lose track because I have traumatic brain injury, so sometimes I forget to what my point was. But when I was training for the marathon, I was still at 200 pounds. So no matter how many miles I was running a day, which was up to like 18 miles a day, I never lost weight. And it was never about calories in, calories out. It wasn't until I adapted my diet, figured out like how that my body began to change. So I guess the point I was trying to make was you have to change what you're putting in your body to make changes.
That is so true. And I think, as I mentioned, people underestimate the power of what's on the end of their fork, right?
Yeah.
We can't out exercise a bad diet, and it may not even be a bad diet, right? It may be a relatively not unreasonable diet, right? Compared to eating processed foods all of the time. But you're exactly right, is giving yourself all of the nutrients and all of the things that come with plants, phytonutrients and antioxidants and things like that. It's in the fiber in and of itself. It's a naturally more of a, high nutrient dense, low calorie dense type of eating pattern that can really go quite a long way to improve your overall metabolism. And like I said, people will see sometimes very rapid changes within a matter of a couple of weeks. And especially for people who may already have certain diagnoses like type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure. And if they're on medications for those, we highly recommend they work with their physicians, because sometimes those medicines will need to be dialed back very quickly because of the significant positive effects they will see from transitioning to more fiber in their diet. So, I think there are other individuals that it may take longer, because if you've been eating a certain way, highly ultra processed foods and things like that, lots of sugar, for years and years, it can take some time to make that change and see significant results. But yes, I think we are sometimes a little bit siloed in our thinking when it comes to, if I exercise, if I focus my attention on exercise, and not to say that exercise isn't hugely important too, but making sure that we're working towards the a healthful dietary plan is so key and critical.
You know, it's interesting because and we see that. So I work for a nonprofit that trains service dogs for veterans, and we'll see people that when their mental health improves, their physical health improves. When they start taking better care of themselves as a whole, there's benefits. We've seen people come down off of meds that they were on, that were for physical things like, you know, blood pressure and things like that. Of course, with the help of their doctors, we never tell anyone to get a dog, stop taking your medicine, of course. But I think one of the things that a lot of people are so intimidated by is anytime you try to make a lifestyle change of any sort, getting healthy is expensive. It's so expensive. Just a gym membership alone, even if you just buy some nice shoes and something to go walking, like these are all things when you go to fix your diet and things like that, there are some base things that are huge costs, especially as you're learning your body. You know, not everyone, some people need more fats. I actually gain weight when I don't eat enough. And it's strange. So what I want to ask about is, you know, there's a lot of barriers that veterans have towards sort of self-improvement. Sometimes we get stuck in that tough it out mindset. So how do we reach people who, you know, how do we incorporate this stuff in a way that you know, I think, how do we reach out to these people that are stuck in that tough it out mindset, I guess is what I'm asking. And I don't think there's really an answer that works for everyone, because just like diet, everybody's minds are different. But what are some ways that you think we could reach out and start teaching people that changing your lifestyle can extend your life and make you happier?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know that I have all the answers, but certainly I think I've seen, you know, podcasts like yours. The digital age has, I think, significantly improved the ability for us to share information. Things like online support groups, can be very instrumental. And you're right, there are a lot of barriers to individuals making changes. But, you know, I think there are so many different groups trying to help with this message, and that it really helps me feel more positive that, you know, changes are happening slowly but surely. One of the areas that I know the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is really focused on, as well as several other groups that I'm sort of advocating for and also collaborating with, including the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, but working towards helping educate healthcare professionals about the power that lifestyle has and how they can work with patients on an individual level to help them make those changes and find ways around those barriers. We all have barriers to making change, right? Some more than others, probably. But how can we get at the level of either helping people have more support through either in-person groups or individuals, or online groups or individuals? The health coaching field, I think, is fantastic and can be another arena. I see that as really becoming such a significantly, more accessible area for a lot of folks, hopefully, very soon.
Especially with people that are finally in a place where they could admit, I don't have the answers. You know, so people like you become even more important, because it takes people who are living these lifestyles to teach.
Absolutely. And, I think it's all about planting seeds, is what I like to tell practitioners and other providers, physicians. We talked a lot about this within our military health system is, as a physician, you may not have all the time in the world to sit down with the patient and spend, an hour or two or three helping them identify those barriers, first of all, and ways to work around them. But how can you plant the seed that empowers them, and then, make them give a handoff to someone else who can help support them, either a health coach through Military One Source, or some other key, area, particular organizations that I know can can fill those roles that's going to best support the patient in making those changes. So yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, and I don't have the right answer necessarily here, but I know that there's a lot of groups out there that are helping to facilitate making that happen. Even within the Veterans Affairs health system, you know, the whole health program, I think, has the foundations of being very instrumental in a lot of ways. And I think one of the areas that we're working with lifestyle medicine is to help overlay lifestyle medicine approaches with whole health to make that more of an effective opportunity for our veterans.
Well, I do appreciate you and being a part of that solution, because anybody who's working to try and make veterans healthier, you got my support.
Yeah,
I appreciate
that's exactly what I would say too. It's like we don't have to have like all the answers, but like Dr. Kiel, you have so many answers that you've been working on in solution sets. And I think one thing is to think about, you know, how do we translate that, you know, to the individual, you know, to the patient use case to be able to inspire that change and desire. Because look, when we look at the health, not just the veteran, if we look at the healthcare landscape in our country, healthcare spending is at an all-time high. We're as unhealthy as a country as we've ever been. The average lifespan, life expectancy for an individual in the United States, we're no longer even in the top 15 for life expectancy around the world. So it's funny to me because if you just listen to this lifestyle practice in medicine, these things that we're talking about and the things you put in, you're gonna see results just like Stacy did. But there's some disconnect between the masses and the status quo of healthcare versus these changes that have to take place. And then we talk about like, okay, well, how can we and what can we do and how are we doing it? And, you know, this is like literally what I dedicate my life to and thinking about this problem. And like you said, I mean, we're doing it. And it's individuals like you and others, and it's being able to take it to the individual patient. Another thing that we've spent a lot of time, you know, thinking about is how can we get the right leaders thinking about this and understanding it. And when you have the right leaders, then you're able to permeate into the organizations. And you know, I was even having this conversation with a buddy of mine who does leadership development training for Fortune 100 companies, and he goes in and works with the top 50. And he was like, what if we could help those leaders understand that? What would the trickle down economics be for, you know, all their employees and their programs when they can incorporate that? And we have to keep going and moving towards that. But that was your trajectory within the Air Force. So you're a pioneer of sorts because you helped change that thinking within inside that military branch, within that bureaucratic organization to stand these programs up. So I would be interested to hear what advice would you give to those, you know, still in the system who are passionate about driving this change, maybe within the Air Force. But then the other side of that is, you know, where are you spending your time now, you know, and what are the things that you're working on now that you get to kind of put that in the rearview mirror as well?
I love those questions. So thank you so much for asking them. So just to start with your first question about, you know, my time in the Air Force, you know, I spent quite my first probably 2/3 of my time as a general pediatrician and also kind of a department leader, right? And then the last third was moving into more of a leadership role at, you know, the military treatment facility, and then on to lead primary care for the Air Force. And I feel like those were great opportunities for me to really blend my thoughts on lifestyle medicine and how it can absolutely aid not only our active duty military population, but families, leaders, you know, everyone that's associated with our military branches. And you know, the conversation a second ago about, you know, the state of chronic disease and healthcare spending across our nation, it's really out of control, as you know. And, you know, people have this sense that our military personnel are fit and, you know, ready to take on, you know, any challenge that may come to them. But the reality is that our our metrics really reflect quite a lot, exactly like the civilian community, the state of health of the civilian community, meaning that, roughly 70% of our active duty members are overweight or obese, with quite a lot of associated healthcare or negative health effects from just that, not to mention all of the other challenges that we face in the military system as far as our health goes, other musculoskeletal injuries and mental health issues, stress and things like that. And so we've got certainly a lot of work to do when it comes to our national security and making sure that we're ready to fit and fight. And, I feel like my most exciting time with the military was really implementing the lifestyle and performance medicine specialty field within the Air Force. And we've got so much work to do. Your talk about leadership, leaders turn over in big organizations, right? And so it's a constant, being a constant voice and a constant advocate for what we know will make a difference. And so that would be my message, 2 messages to those that are still, wearing the suit is always be an advocate for what you know is right. Speak up. And then secondly, walk the talk, right? Embody what you know is right. As leaders, if you're not doing the things that you're telling the people that you lead to do, then how much faith do they have in you, right? It's kind of like parents telling your kids to do what I say, not what I do, right? If you're not doing those things, your impact is going to be poor as far as helping people make those positive changes. So those would be the 2 recommendations that I would have for people that are continuing to advocate for what we're talking about here. And then as far as what I'm doing now, I'm continuing to collaborate with a number of organizations, including American College of Lifestyle Medicine and Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. I am what we call a Food for Life cooking coach, a cooking demonstrator. So using culinary medicine techniques to help families and individuals learn how to cook with whole food plants. How can we incorporate more whole food plants into their diet? Those are things that I, would love to continue to offer for veterans as well as active duty service members, because I think we lack time and we lack the skill set oftentimes to be able to cook. And so those are 2 areas where I see helping people learn the skills to cook. They may not have everything accessible to them, may not even have a full kitchen, but how can we help them make small steps with what they have and add more plants to their plate and recognize how impactful that can be? So that's part of what I'm doing. And then I envision that I'll continue to do pediatric work. I'm just taking a small break right now. I'm stood up a company called Brio Blues, which I'm excited to say is at the forefront of being able to offer cooking demonstrations and also expertise when it comes to helping coach individuals towards making positive changes. So that is an area where I'm obviously quite passionate about and really excited to be on this side of continuing to support military and veteran health through those mechanisms.
Well, I absolutely love that, Dr. Kiel. Thank you so much. And I mean, personally, I would love to be able to follow up with you because I work with so many veteran organizations that are looking at veteran mental health and, how do you provide or alleviate, the suffering from somebody that's so far, down the path. And there's definitely interventions and alternative therapies, but it's an end-to-end approach, and it's this whole ecosystem that really needs to come online to transition maybe even to healthcare 2.0. And I think there's a lot of programs and veterans and organizations I know that could benefit from being able to incorporate the things that you're talking about. So yeah, so we just appreciate you so much with the time that you spent with us today. And we'll make sure to have your social media in our show notes, as well as your website. But will you share where folks can best get in contact with you with?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the best way right now is either through LinkedIn, and I can share that with you, or they can email me at brioblues@gmail.com. I can share that with you, BRIO and then BLUEZ@gmail.com. It means, in case you're interested, vibrant life. It's kind of a nod to the Blue Zones. I don't know if you're familiar with the Blue Zones work, but about extending health and longevity to individuals so that they can live their best lives, even, past serving in the military, but through retirement as well.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Oh, I absolutely love that. We've covered a lot of ground today. We're so appreciative for you to come and be with us. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Congratulations on your retirement. And
You made it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with all of you today, and I look forward to staying in contact.
Thank you so much for visiting us today. Alphas, please stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
Hey, be willing to show up for a veteran. Be willing to trust your gut, follow your heart, and take a risk. Be willing to sit without saying a word, without checking the time. Be the one who's willing to ask, to guess wrong, to even offend another, to keep them safe, to remind them that they are valuable. If you know a veteran, be the one to reach out and make them a part of your life.
Okay, Alphas, we hope you had a very great break. Maybe had some legumes on a plate, some snacks, some veggies. But now it's time for some scuttlebutt.
Because of our recording schedule, we really haven't gotten into this yet, but those alphas who've been following American Legion media will know that at the National Convention back in August, the American Legion announced an official partnership with the Army-Navy football game, presented by USAA, which will be played for the 125th time on December 14th, 2024. The American Legion becomes the first VSO to sponsor America's game in its history. Pretty cool.
Nice.
So the Legion, the nation's largest veteran service organization, has secured a multi-year deal alongside presenting sponsor USAA and participating partners Chevrolet, Exchange, Duke Cannon Supply Co., and Palantir. The Legion will also be participating in year-round sponsorships of both Army, West Point Athletics, and Navy Athletics. The agreement starts with this year's game at Commanders Field in Landover, Maryland, and helps the American Legion raise awareness about its Be the One mission to reduce the number of veterans and service members lost to suicide. We're going to amplify our Be the One mission by offering partners of the Army-Navy game presented by USAA National Commander Daniel C. Hafer, the previous National Commander C. Hafer, said on stage at the 2024 American Legion National Convention in New Orleans. The Army-Navy game is among the longest-standing and most storied rivalries in college football history. This new partnership aligns with the Legion's core values of service, patriotism, and camaraderie. Joe, Stacy, what do you think?
I mean, I'm not big on football, but I know this one.
I've heard of those teams. The Army and the...
I have heard of the Army and the Navy game.
Yeah, I had to look up Army. I didn't know that there was an Army or a football team for that matter, but apparently the United States has a Army.
Army. And
yeah.
Navy.
Armenians? I don't know.
The Armenians.
So Chet Gladchuk goes on, director of athletics at the U.S. Naval Academy, goes on to say, the opportunity to enhance the relationship with the Legion is so very much appreciated. As partners, we share common values that accentuate country and patriotism. America's game will only further promote our shared vision and mutual support for those veterans who have advanced the cause of our great nation. They're pretty excited over at Navy. Mike Buddy, director of athletics at West Point, countered with we're thrilled to partner with the American Legion as our official veteran service organization. This collaboration will continue to elevate America's game on the national stage and showcase the incredible support the American Legion provides our veteran and service members. And the game is shaping up to be exciting. Look, it's always exciting to get the cadets out there. They're wearing their uniforms. You got a stadium full of West Pointers and Naval Academy.
Frothing at the mouth.
Coming out. And it's also at a time when most of the other games are not being played. I think it's like one of the last games right before bowl season kicks off. It's normally really cold. And I've never been to one, but the atmosphere like always, looks so incredible. And I love seeing the cadets just in the stands, like so passionate. And being ROTC, yeah, go ahead.
I have a very serious question for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready for it.
The Air Force has a mascot, and it's the Falcons. The Air Force Academy. First of all, why in the hell isn't the Air Force involved in any of these football games? Second, does the Army, does West Point have a mascot, and does the Naval Academy have a mascot?
Yes.
And is it because my brain
great
my brain
question,
is
Stacey.
manifesting a whole lot of different mascots. I'm just curious.
Yeah, they're the Black Knights at Army, and then what are they? The midshipmen,
Yeah, the midshipmen. Yeah.
Midshipmen, that's so lame.
Well,
and literal.
And it is very literal.
Everybody can be
Freaking
a blue
Navy.
Falcon, Stacey.
Huh? Like at least we're
The
like
Blue Falcon should definitely
And
be the
they do play Air Force.
they do, but we don't.
occasionally, but-
Why don't we have some like awesome matchup? Why does it have to be Army Navy? This is dumb.
It is building. Why don't so listen, Army Navy, you got it. All right, but are you ready for this?
No.
Air Force, Space Force. Boom. Make them fight to the death. Or, till somebody wins.
Well,
They don't have to
Air
die.
Force actually stood up from the Army Air Corps. So the Air Force was an extension of Army.
And
So
I
just
just want to
recruits
add, I take
from there.
exception to it being called America's Game. I would say water polo or curling, but that's just me.
Holly wants to know if there's a goat involved. Yes,
There's
there is a goat
Bill
involved.
the goat. It's very straightforward. Not a lot of engineers types in the Navy. They get work done. They should not be in charge of naming things.
I have so many questions why there's a goat involved. Leave it to the Navy.
We had to have something that people could steal.
I have a question though. Is it like, is it a fainting goat or is it a goat with horns?
I would say that every goat's a fainting
man
goat
who
if you
stares
approach
at a
the
goat.
situation correctly.
In October, history was made as both the Army and Navy football teams were both ranked in AP Top 25 polls for the first time since 1960. Joe, by my math, that's 64 years. The rival programs enjoyed historic starts as the Black Knights and the Midshipmen with the Goats
Lame.
rode stellar offenses to undefeated starts. While both teams were ranked in 1960, you have to go back to 1957 to find the last time that both were ranked during the annual Army-Navy game. On November 30th, 1957 in Philadelphia, number 8 Navy beat number 10 Army 14-0 to win the rivalry game. 15 years before the Commander-in-Chief's trophy was created. The American Legion is encouraging posts to organize watch parties for the game, which will air on at 3 p.m. Eastern on December 14th on CBS.
Mandatory fun time. There will be a test.
Mandatory fun. I will say, great tip on the Air Force versus Space Force, but I think that's not going to happen until like 3024 because it's going to have to be out in outer space, like Star Trek style. Considering
less
that,
injuries probably.
Yeah, considering that the Air Force and Space Force still share the same academy, so fun.
That'll just make the rivalry even juicier.
Like flag football. It would be totally Air Force. Excuse me, don't tackle me. Don't tackle me. Okay,
like their biggest athlete, they're not biggest, but they're like star athletes, like this 5'5" guy, because he's just so fast, nobody
Work
can get his
smarter,
flags.
not harder, Joe. Don't be jealous.
Hey.
All right. According to the BBC, the Pentagon has announced that more than 800 veterans who were thrown out of the U.S. military because of their sexual orientation will now receive honorable discharges. Under a policy known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell that was in effect from 1994 to 2011, thousands of openly gay, lesbian, and bisexual service members were separated from the military. Many were given less than honorable discharges, which blocked them from receiving veteran benefits such as healthcare, student loans, and tuition assistance. A little more than a year ago, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had the military begin reviewing veterans' records to possibly upgrade discharge statuses. In a statement on Tuesday, he paid tribute to the service and the sacrifice of all the troops, including the brave Americans who raised their hands to serve but were turned away because of who they loved. With the upgrades from the review, nearly all of the 13,500 individuals who were let go under the Don't Ask, Don't Tell now have an honorable discharge, he said. Those veterans will see their discharge papers automatically updated and will be eligible to request copies of their upgraded discharge certifications. Those who believe they have been erroneously or unjustly left out of the Tuesday's decision may also request a correction to their military records. The Pentagon told CBS News and BBC's U.S. partner that the U.S. has relatively recently changed its stance on gay and bisexual people serving in the armed forces. In June, President Joe Biden issued pardons to thousands of service members who have been convicted of a crime under the military law based on their sexual orientation. Now, I think this is huge because there were so many wonderful people who just wanted to serve their country, and because of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, were unceremoniously discharged and deserve what they worked hard for. So, I mean, you can't get back the years that they didn't get their benefits, but I hope that this is a step in the right direction.
You really want to take care of these people. You give them back pay.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I mean,
what about like in the early 90s when they're like, how are we gonna handle this? You know what? They don't ask and we don't let them tell. That's it.
It's so ridiculous.
That's how we're gonna handle this.
I've
like,
actually
think about it as like, you know what? Don't ask any questions and don't tell anybody. So we're just gonna.
I
So
actually
crazy.
looked into this a couple of years ago because I was curious how you approach a conversation like this back then. And sadly, this was the only way to protect these people at this point. It sounds awful and it sounds crazy to say it, and it doesn't sound, I'm not saying it was a good policy. I'm saying it was the only way to keep people from diving into their lives, is to say you're not allowed to talk about this. And it's not a long-term solution, but it, I think that at the time, misguided as it might have been, that was the best way that they knew to handle it. So again, I'm not defending Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I'm saying that sadly, a full acceptance was not on the table. I don't think they were mature enough for that at that time. And so I think that this, as sad as it is, was their compromise. It sounds awful to say that that's what it was, but but again, you really want to take care of people. You can't, if you don't have access to these benefits, you give them back pay. You take care of these people the way that you should have, 20 years ago. Because like Stacy said, there's a lot of really great people and their personal lives should not have any bearing whatsoever on their military service. Those two things are separate.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you feel about it.
I know, like, I don't care who you love in a foxhole. Can you pull a trigger? That's all that really mattered to me.
Yeah.
I don't care at all. Period.
Besides, before you love others, you got to love yourself. Just again, not in the foxhole.
Well, I'm going to love you in the foxhole no matter what. Huggies.
Huggies in the foxhole. Foxhole huggies.
Foxhole huggies.
We're doing huggies at 0900. We got a battle at 10, so we're got to get them out of the way. So I will have links for that in the show notes. But I want to ask you young bucks and does here, what characteristics define the best World War II movies? Is it the intensity and realism of the portrayal of the chaotic battlefield? A lot of people could not legitimately, like, I'm making a lot of jokes, but like the start of Saving Private Ryan, good heavens, that was intense.
Yeah.
What about the heroism and the camaraderie? I think it's a mix of both, but the camaraderie is removed from the actual combat. It's humanizing the people that served, like Band of Brothers. I mean, it did the combat, but man, that the Band of Brothers, the name itself is talking about that one, that the love that people have, for the people they served with. So, any expert on war movies will admit that, taste is, of course, subjective, but the defining World War II movies of the past 8 decades actually all have one thing in common. They resonate deeply with audiences beyond the box office success and Hollywood awards. And that became apparent when military.com asked their readers to share their must-watch war movies. Can you guess what the top pick was?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know what mine probably would be,
Yeah,
but I'm gonna see what
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. I don't know if that was really World War.
I'm not great on history. Sorry.
But I think something like Pearl Harbor, which would have been like a real box office, there was so much, a little bit too much Hollywood in there. It was a little too much. It was a little off for me. So that probably would have been high on the Hollywood factor. It was nice,
Yeah.
but not quite it. I think Band of Brothers was amazing. And like you said, the camaraderie aspect of it was great.
Mhm.
But Saving Private Ryan for like a feature length film really crunched in the sort of intensity, the camaraderie, so for me, that probably would have been right up there for me.
And who would have thought Tom Hanks, of all people,
Memphis
could
Belle was one for me, and it always will be as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember
But
watching that when I was in the early 90s. So I must have only been in like second or third grade. And I distinctly remember like at the very end, one of the crews like comes in and they crash land. And like I just started crying. And
Mhm.
parents were like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, for me, like that was so real. It's like they were trying to come in and complete their, mission set. And the plane was struggling, and there it was right in front of them, and just complete loss of life. And what was I, 8 or 9, 9 years old? And that's just, I mean, that's me in a nutshell, though. That's me like before the military, just a very heart-centered, compassionate kid. So I think anything that shows it could be really graphic, it could not be so, but the authenticity of the experiences and the pain and the loss for something greater than self. So that's funny that you say Memphis Belle. That I have a very vivid memory with that, because I'm not like such a war like movie person, but Saving Private Ryan in 1998, so what are we, like 18, 19 years old? It's a very
yeah.
powerful movie at that time. I remember the commentary too being like, there were World War II veterans going to that and having significant traumatic experiences in the theater from seeing that, because I don't think it had really been shown that graphically,
Yeah.
a movie to that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think personally, there's a few that have really hit me. Obviously, being Hacksaw Ridge, being who I am, was something
Mm,
that resonated. Of course, Casablanca, although that's as much a love movie as anything, but but Fury also. I don't know if you saw that, but Fury was just, it's one of those kind of hard to watch, but there's some, you can go back and some of them are just like Dirty Dozen and to Hell and Back, Sands of Iwo Jima, like Letters from Iwo Jima in 2006. Like some of these were really, really impactful movies. And I think that I speak for a lot of veterans when I say you kind of have to be in a special place sometimes to watch these movies, because they do take a toll. And I've been meaning to watch the what was the new one that came out on Netflix that's in
Masters of the
French?
Skies.
A Masters of the Skies. Which one is that?
That's the World War II Army Air Corps
Yeah,
bomber cruise, and I think that was so well done.
yeah,
And I think that would probably be in. And I make it a point not to watch military combat movies, no matter what
yeah.
generation. And I
yeah.
made an exception to watch that series, and I have no regrets. And that really harkened back to the sort of Memphis Belle kind of feel for me as well, in terms of the human experience, which I appreciated. And it really delved into the POW experience too, which you don't see a lot of in any war film, with the exception of what was the one from Japan? I'm drawing a blank now about the Japanese POW experience.
That one was
Yeah.
intense.
I want to see All's Quiet on the Western Front. That's the one that I want to watch when I'm in a good space. It's just this being my, my 20-year anniversary of my injury. It just seems like a weird year to gamble on being sad for a few days.
Yeah.
I'm not in a low spot. I'm doing great. Not to alert any of our alphas out there. I'm actually doing great, but I do that by staying above my baseline of making sure that when I feel vulnerable, I don't add stressors. And for me, the empathy that I have towards my fellow veterans of all eras is something that is obviously a trigger for me. And there's a place for that. There's a place, I build my battery back up. I put the armor back on by doing things like this. And so, but these movies, they, feel free to jump over to our subreddit, which is, Reddit, and then it's /r/Tango Alpha Lima, and tell us what you think. We got a full list of movies there, so you guys jump in and let us know what you think about that. And of course,
I love me some Reddit, guys. So get on that Reddit rabbit hole.
Yes,
go down the rabbit hole with me. Let's talk some military movies.
And we'll have the those in the show notes, along with the article from military.com.
All right, Alphas. Thanks for listening. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, I think I like it.